Warning.
Once they've arrived on Aldani, Cassian is in need of an undercover identity and decides to become a crackhead named Clem. Vel and Crackhead Clem go for a nice hike across Middle-earth instead of doing their jobs. Wearing their stereotypical reefer ponchos, the two are passing around a joint and discussing the job at hand when the fuzz rolls by and they hide. Jonesing hard, Vel and Clem dip into their emergency stash of drugs. They then run into one of their stoner friends sleeping. Crackhead Clem meets this merry band of tweakers. Clem's new friends are a tremendous influence on him as he moves up to heroin. Recovering from his heroin coma, Clem is awake. This guy is the crew's contact at the Imperial Garrison, and he's not happy about having to deal with this group of strung-out druggies. The crew goes over the plan with Legos, and they get excited about all the crack they can buy after the score. They ask Clem if he's in for another round of chasing the dragon.
Let's get to it.
One tweaker shows Crackhead Clem how to use an iPad, but he's too high to even know where he is right now, and the episode comes to an end. We return to Andor, still undercover as Crackhead Clem, who's just coming back to reality, and he's worried his magic meth crystal was stolen, but it's still there. He casually spies on a man bathing, and the man invites him to stare at his nipples. He tells Andor, "You can have my nipples, but you'll never have my trust." This dropout pours Clem some milk laced with LSD.
You may question our existence after a few days.
They talk about how the man is keeping them down, man. The Empire's just not cool, man. Vel tried to make a birdhouse, but she was too high. She still tries to show it off to Clem and he doesn't like it. I mean really doesn't like it. Tremaine asks Clem to picture a mountain of crack right in front of them. The gang's informant in the garrison is angry that the security let this band of druggies vandalize a gazebo out front. Tremaine squeezes Andor's butt and he almost blows his cover.
More. Don't touch me.
But he gets back into character.
If you want something, you tell me.
And offers to trade his body for more drugs. Returning to the gang, they're high again and practicing their Nazi march in preparation for their coming heist. The fuzz rolls in and they scatter. The popo run a flyby in an effort to scare the lowlifes and clean up the neighborhood. With the heat gone, they break into their hidden stash to celebrate. Andor, aka Clem, freaks out when one of them grabs his jelly beans. Back to the gang, they're trying to hotbox their tent, and Skeen passes the blunt. This girl prepares to shoot smack in between her toes. Skeen the Skeeve takes Andor's special meth crystal he knew Andor was hiding, but his undercover identity Clem is willing to kill for it. Skeen apologizes for taking Clem's meth crystal, saying, "Sorry man, I got confused, I was high." We start off with Andor, still undercover, and the band of tweakers he's fallen in with in their final moments before they try to pull off this big score. They've gone clean before the job, and Dropout is feeling the effects.
I couldn't sleep.
It's natural.
Dropout mentions a manifesto he scribbled when he was high. Moving to the Imperial Garrison, Fatty McEmpire is talking mad shit on the locals. They discuss how they've been offering weed along the way to the pilgrims coming for The Eye, a local drug and music festival, and it's whittled down the number coming from 500 to only 60. Tremaine is revealed to be a former stormtrooper whose life fell apart when he started dipping into the drugs in the evidence lockers. The pilgrims who aren't satisfied with just weed arrive near the garrison for the festival. The fuzz eyes them up and down, noting the scent of marijuana. The boys get into uniform 90 minutes late because they're strung out. Our tweaker crew gets distracted by the prospect of drugs and joins the locals as they head toward the festival. The shroomers get hungry and roast the raccoon. By some stroke of luck, everything is going well for the tweakers' plan up to this point. Andor, coming to his senses now that he's been clean, promises them no one will die. Then Cinta comes in, and this man dies. The festival is underway as the locals get a bonfire going. The guards try and bribe Tremaine with munchies, but to their dismay, he's not high and not interested. The festival is in full swing as the hippie circle is complete with singing. We return to the festival where everyone's starting to trip balls. They've broken into the vault. They imagine all the dope they could buy. Skeen is ready to fucking party. The Imperial radio technician hears some party music downstairs. Clem launches the escape shuttle, but he didn't tell the crew he dropped acid earlier and he's too high to drive. The acid is really kicking in for Clem. Vel shoots Dropout up with smack and the popo are hot on their tail. Dropout is delirious and can't pronounce Clem's name. The Popo open fire while Dropout plays his Game Boy. The festival goers are peaking big time right now. Vel wants to ditch Dropout because she doesn't want to split the drug money. They take Dropout to Doc Ock, and Skeen is annoyed this is delaying them from buying drugs. Dropout has overdosed. Andor is tripping balls by this point and just wants to leave this drug-fueled life behind and gives up his magical meth crystal.
Back on Aldani, Cinta thinks she's still high when she sees a Star Destroyer pull in. Back to reality, the stormtroopers are looking for druggies like Clem. He's going by Keef now, which is slang for the THC crystals on marijuana buds. He clearly hasn't entirely kicked his drug habit and is drinking ayahuasca in the shower. He's hallucinating on the beach and seeing all these weird creatures, and this trooper can tell he's on something and questions him. Andor, aka Clem, aka Keef, gets sentenced to 6 years for his drug use. Andor, aka Keef Gergo, is sent off to a shuttle bound for Narkina 5. Andor and his fellow prisoners are unloaded, and one prisoner tries to attack the guards by farting.
Breathe deep, brother.
The guard says if the group can breakdance well enough, they'll be allowed to go free. But they fail. Andor goes back to his old ways, asking for drugs.
Keef. Keef. What? Keef.
Andor's drug-riddled brain can't keep up, and he's about to freak out. Keef is tripping again, feeling residual effects from the recent drug-fueled months. He sees a man doing interpretive dance and is mesmerized. Andor is shown the cube he now lives in, complete with all the amenities, but he only cares what tube the munchies come out of. Andor is feeling better, having been off drugs again for a month now, and because he's being productive in his new job. Boss Man is suspicious of Andor, aka Keef's upbeat attitude, and reminds him that he's in jail. Back in jail, we learn why Keef is so upbeat as he knocks off a panel to get into his stash of drugs. But he's high and paranoid and freaks out when the walls start talking to him. Andor and his dealer talk about openings to escape the prison. Kino confiscated Keef's drugs and tells him he's on thin ice.
You've been warned.
Keef is having withdrawals and gets annoyed that no one's helping him score some dope.
Nobody's listening. Nobody. Nobody's listening. Nobody's listening!
Realizing he's never getting out of here otherwise, Kino is willing to answer Keef's questions about escaping now. Andor, aka Keef, is badgering him to break out of jail tomorrow. The drugs in this jail just aren't doing the trick for him anymore. He's finally able to convince Kino that they need to bust out, man. Keef is in the bathroom trying to strip some aluminum salvage to trade for drugs. Keef gets mad that he can't get this metal off and takes it out on this pipe. Keef, in his blind anger, busts the pipe open and water comes flooding out. Keef's best friend, his drug dealer, makes a move toward the guard, but his upper body strength isn't what he thought it was. Keef can smell his favorite strain of weed and demands that the guard cough it up.
I don't have it. He has the hydrogens.
Now that they're in control of the PA system, Keef is begging Kino to ask if anyone has some good bud they can share. Keef and Melshi have done it as they're out of jail and avoiding Imperial patrols. We open up on a cliffside where a bloodied Andor, aka Keef, and Melshi are doing some rock climbing while avoiding Imperial detection after their recent jailbreak. Keef and his new buddy are crawling around after having eaten the wrong kind of mushrooms upon their escape from prison. They're seeing some weird little creatures during their hallucinations. Remembering they're on a mission to escape this planet, they sprint toward the first ship they see, but get caught by intergalactic superhero Spider-Man. The creatures are becoming all too real as they're threatening to turn Keef and Melshi into the Empire for a reward. But Keef and Melshi realize it's all been in their minds, so they hop into the ship and take off, headed for Planet Miami. We move to Planet Miami, where Keef is already breaking into his old stash looking for the sweet taste of freedom and mescaline. The arrestor locks Luthen's ship in its tractor beam while they run the ID after connecting this vessel to notorious druggie Crackhead Clem, aka Keef. Keef makes one final drug deal and looks out over the ocean, briefly questioning his choices in life. Andor, aka Keef, is back on Ferrix, probably high again, just to make a scene at the funeral. Keef hops the wall at Bix's place just to be greeted by two drug-sniffing dogs who aren't fooled about exactly what Keef is. Andor, aka Keef, tells Luthen to kill him and end his miserable life ruined by drugs or take him into the rebellion, and it's an easy choice. And the episode and the first season come to an end.